Okay, we'll get underway now. Thanks everybody for coming today. Before we actually start proceedings, I'd like to introduce Uncle Chicka, who's going to give us a welcome to country. So, Uncle Chicka, would you like to come up now? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, folks. My name is Charles Madden, but known around the inner city of Sydney as Chicka. Pardon me. That's a nickname that I got many, many years ago going to Redfern Public School, which is now NCIE, the National Centre for Indigenous Excellence. Folks, I'm from Gadigal land, Aboriginal land. That's the land we're on at the moment. For many, many years, I've lived and worked around the city of Sydney. I've been involved with many different Aboriginal organisations over the years. I've been a director with the Aboriginal Medical Service at Redfern for over 40 years. Also a director with the Redfern Aboriginal Housing Company, Aboriginal Hostels Australia, and the Metropolitan Local Aboriginal Land Council, where I am still a very active member. I've got to mention it, folks. Also a life member of the Redfern All Blacks Rugby League Football Club. Folks, for many, many years I've lived and worked around the city of Sydney. I'd like to take this opportunity this morning to extend a warm and sincere welcome to any of my Aboriginal brothers and sisters, non-Aboriginal brothers and sisters. If we have any brothers and sisters here from the Torres Strait or further afar across the seas, welcome. Welcome to Gadigal land. Could you put your phones on silent, please? Welcome to Gadigal land. The Gadigal clan is one of 29 that makes up the Eora Nation. The Eora Nation is bordered by 3 distinctive landmarks. We have the Hawkesbury River to the north, the Nepean to the west, and the Georges River to the south. Those 3 rivers form the boundaries of the Eora Nation. Folks, if you've travelled across this great city of ours today, the state, or this great country, or from afar, welcome. Welcome to Gadigal land. Enjoy your stay. Have a safe and trouble-free trip home. Once again, welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you. Enjoy the day, folks. Thank you. Thank you, my brother. I've got to keep going.
See you tomorrow.
Yeah, tomorrow.
Again, folks, the people standing at the back, there's 3 or 4 chairs down the front if people want to come down and take a seat. People can hear me okay? Yes, great. Okay, so hi, my name's Russell Westacott. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Seniors' Rights Service and now one of the founding directors of Elder Abuse Action Australia, which is the reason we're here today. I'd like to pay my respects to the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and thanks Uncle Chicka for the welcome, and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. Many thanks goes to the Attorney-General, Honourable Christian Porter, for being here today to launch Elder Abuse Action Australia. Of course, Seniors' Rights Service is one of many members of the newly formed national peak agency known as EAAA. On behalf of the volunteers, staff and board of Seniors' Rights Service, we welcome you to our Sydney office of our workplace. I would also like to acknowledge others who are with us today, including Kay Patterson, Age Discrimination Commissioner, Anna Bly, CEO of the Australian Banking Association, and Professor Rosalind Croucher, President of the Australian Human Rights Commission. Also, I acknowledge my fellow co-directors of EAAA, Jenny Blakey, Scott McDougall, Carol Ann Barkler, and Deidre Timms. Of course, Jenny and Scott will be making some remarks a little later on. Welcome to everybody else in the room. Thanks for coming along to this launch of Elder Abuse Action Australia. Also, welcome to people who have joined us on a live webcast. So thank you. It's great to have as many people interested in this emerging organisation and its new function and its role across various sectors, which we will hear later on when Jenny and Scott speak. In February, Seniors Rights Service hosted the 5th National Elder Abuse Conference and 570 people attended the event. Also, more than 500 additional people attended related satellite events at various community locations. The conference attracted individuals from each state and territory, people who work in the legal sector, the aged care sector, aged care advocacy, human rights, health services, social research organisations, banking and finance sectors, various media professionals, and dozens of community-based organisations across the country and members of diverse communities. And of course, tomorrow is World Elder Abuse Awareness Day. Throughout this week, quite literally, there are hundreds of community events going on around the country in both metro areas and regional Australia. They are being conducted by a range of stakeholders like many of the people present in this room today, and also many of those who attended the conference back in February. The various sectors and individuals that come together to build responses to elder abuse are passionate about seeing those affected by elder abuse, that they're well supported, and those at risk of elder abuse are provided adequate information and support to prevent abuse happening to them. Elder Abuse Action Australia is an example of how the various sectors, organisations and individuals that work on the front line in terms of responding to elder abuse on a daily basis want to work in synergy with each other so that meaningful outcomes can occur across Australian society, so that Australia can be a leader in terms of its social response to elder abuse, an issue that affects every culture and every society in the world. Of course, EAAA, to do its work and for the various sectors to mount effective responses to elder abuse, they need to be resourced. That is why so many people across the sector working in this space were thrilled to hear the Attorney-General's announcement at the closing plenary of the 5th National Elder Abuse Conference back in February of a $15 million package to develop a national plan in response to elder abuse. Today is probably the first time that this group present today and those joining us on the webcast has been together since the conference in February. And of course, since the conference in February, the Commonwealth Government have handed down its budget in May. As part of that budget, the Attorney-General announced that the $15 million announced at the conference back in February would be increased to a total of $37 million. Also, through the portfolio of the Honourable Ken Wyatt, Minister for Aged Care, there were additional announcements in regards to elder abuse and aged care. So I think it's pretty fair to say the people who want to see real change and meaningful change, the people in this room and the many hundreds, hopefully even thousands, of people who are watching on our webcast, those who work in the community-based organisations around the country, as well as the broader community, are delighted that the government has made these funding announcements. So thank you very much. I would like to extend my personal thank you to the Attorney-General for your commitment in supporting people affected by elder abuse and reducing the risks of elder abuse in Australia. So welcome the Honourable Christian Porter.
Well, thank you, Russell, for that very kind introduction. I will ask if you can hear me at the back spilling over into the kitchen. I represent a largely country electorate in WA, and I actually asked that question if someone could hear me at the back at sort of a town hall meeting recently, and an elderly farmer said that he could, but that he was happy to swap with someone who couldn't. So they don't lose their sense of humour out my way. Can I also, Mr. Charles Madden, thank you for that very warm welcome to country. My father's name is Charles, and at school he got Chilla rather than Chicka. So my mum banned Charles as the name for me because she didn't want another nickname coming up in the family, but it's one of those names that gives rise to fantastic nicknames. So thank you for that warm welcome to country. I'd also like to acknowledge our distinguished guests and thank all of you who join us today to mark World Elder Abuse Awareness Day. including the many people who are joining us remotely by video link, which is a fantastic thing for us to have you here. I'll also just like to acknowledge the former Queensland Premier, Anna Bligh. Anna, it's great to have you here. And Kay and Rosalind have been acknowledged earlier on, and I'll have something to say about Kay's early overtures to me on this issue in a moment. But the United Nations General Assembly has, as we are now all aware, designated June 15th as World Elder Awareness Day. So tomorrow across the world we unite to oppose abuse, mistreatment and suffering that is too often inflicted on older people. It is a very significant day and the perfect occasion to highlight the work that is now being undertaken across government and the Australian community to address elder abuse. And I'll say a little bit more on that in a moment. I'd also like to thank the Seniors' Rights Service for hosting the event and, of course, pay my respects to the elders of the land on which we meet, past and present. We know that discrimination and elder abuse and abuse of older Australians is already a critical issue for Australia. Australian life expectancy has steadily risen to rank amongst the highest in the world, which is obviously fantastic news, but is accompanied with a range of challenges. In 2016, 15% of all Australians, that's 3.7 million people, were aged over 65. By the year 2056, it is projected that about 22% of Australians, that's 8.7 million people, will be aged over 65. So Australia needs to support and value the contribution of older Australians for a great variety of reasons. We need to challenge negative attitudes to ageing and to older people. Ageist attitudes lead some people to neglect, to mistreat, exploit or abuse older Australian adults. By addressing elder abuse now and doing it in a very vigorous way, many thousands of older citizens in our community can be protected from the indignity of any kind of abuse, even as the number of older people in our community rises, which we know that it will. It's critical to tackle ageism head on, and that's why we're all here today, to act and to do it in a cooperative and collaborative way. We know that several other countries have made very detailed attempts to measure the prevalence of elder abuse. And of course, one of the things that struck me as remarkable in this area is that Australia had not undertaken that journey to understand the nature and extent of the problem that we're dealing with. So as part of the Turnbull government's 2016 election commitment, we will undertake the first ever study of the prevalence of elder abuse in Australia. And in addition, the Attorney General's Department has commissioned researchers to review existing surveys and data sources so that the best and most current information will be available to inform all of our future actions. I thought I might just today share some of the very first results that have come from analysing the 2016 Australian Bureau of Statistics Personal Safety Survey. The survey estimates that 78,900 people, that's 1.3% of the population aged over 55, about 1.3% of the population aged over 55 had experienced some form of physical violence by someone known to them in the past 12 months. In 55% of cases, physical violence occurred in the older person's home. In about 3/4 of these cases, that's 73.1% of the cases, the assault was not reported to the police, and in 17% of the cases, the victim did not tell anyone about the abuse, not even friends, family or health professionals. I think those are remarkable and sobering statistics. They highlight the extent of the problem and the challenge we face to eradicate elder abuse as we move forward with an ageing population. The data shows that we still need to do a lot more to break the taboo that surrounds elder abuse and to encourage reporting whenever it occurs. And in reflecting on what the Turnbull government has done over the last 12 months and what we intend to do to address the multiple forms of elder abuse, mistreatment and violence against older people, I'd note that a year ago today, on 14 June 2017, my predecessor, the Honourable Senator George Brandis QC, who recently met the Queen, notable for the fact that there was a photo of Meghan Markle somewhere in the background, so he's having an interesting time. He tabled the Australian Law Reform Commission Report 131, Elder Abuse, a National Legal Response. The President of the Australian Human Rights Commission and author of that report, Professor Rosalind Croucher, of course, is here with us today. And the ALRC made 43 recommendations, including recommending the development of a national plan on elder abuse. And I might say that Kay came to see me on either day 2 or 3 of becoming Australia's 37th Attorney General and said to me, you will have all the people from all of these agencies that deal with national security convincing you that that's the most important issue, and it's very important. And she looked me in the eye and said, this is the most important issue you will deal with. I must say, Kay, I think you may well have been right. The ALRC made 43 recommendations. So on 20 February 2018, I announced that the Council of Attorneys General had agreed to develop Australia's first ever national plan on elder abuse by the end of this year, which milestone is rapidly approaching. A detailed consultation paper identifying priority action areas informs the consultation with stakeholders, including the community sector and business, and consultations are getting underway as we speak through existing and targeting forums at the Commonwealth, state and territory level. And then, as was noted earlier, on 8 May 2018, the Turnbull government announced its plan to provide an additional $22 million in funding across 4 years to tackle elder abuse as part of the More Choices for a Longer Life budget measures. From early 2019, the funding will see the establishment of trials of specialist elder abuse units in legal services, more support for family counselling and mediation services, and the advancement of health justice partnerships. New specialist staff will be employed to provide practical and professional help to older people experiencing abuse and their families and carers, including in many regional areas. In addition to significantly increasing the availability of frontline services for people seeking help with elder abuse, a priority of the trials is to work with state and territory governments and the community sector to develop the evidence base of what works, for whom, when and how. These measures build on the Turnbull government's previous allocation of $15 million committed and announced during the 2016 election for a national prevalence study to inform a national plan on elder abuse and the development of an elder abuse knowledge hub, a central knowledge hub to make it easier for older people, their families, carers and support staff and allied professionals to access information and training necessary to detect, prevent and address abuse of older Australians. So I think you will see that this government is the first government in Australia's history to take this issue head on and very, very seriously, and the Prime Minister is personally committed to our endeavours in this respect. One of my key priorities, and an early priority as Attorney General, and it's a matter that Anna and I have had discussions on, is to address financial abuse and the exploitation of older people. The Australian Law Reform Commission showed that financial abuse of older people is an issue needing our urgent attention. We all too often hear stories of family members taking control of an older person's money, including through making social or physical threats. That person very often ends up impecunious or homeless. They are more vulnerable and depend on the goodwill of their family and friends. In many cases, the financial control has been gained through the process, the long-standing and appropriate legal process of power of attorney arrangements, but an appropriate process liable to misuse. While enduring powers arrangements, when they work very well and they facilitate a person's ongoing support in a time when help is needed, there is clearly scope for very considerable abuse of that process. The banking sector in particular is telling us that abuse is very hard to detect due to the complex arrangements for checking the validity of powers assigned under enduring powers of attorney. And I believe, as I put at last Friday's Council of Attorneys General meeting that was held in Perth, that we can do far more as a country and as a legal profession, I might say, to prevent financial abuse and intervene far earlier than has been the case in the past. Law reform and the establishment of a register to track powers of attorney arrangements are absolute key objectives of this government, and funding has been reserved in the 2018 budget to support this work, and consultations with the states and territories, as I say, commenced and continued last Friday, so that we can have a harmonised, consistent system of powers of attorney across Australia, that they can be registered and we can check the validity of these documents as and when we need to. So I'll conclude today by acknowledging one other significant development in the past 12 months that we're all, of course, here to celebrate today, and that is the formation of Elder Abuse Action Australia, which I no doubt will become known as EAAA. So EAAA is a coalition of very capable and driven organisations and individuals directed and dedicated to advancing the rights of older Australians. The members have already contributed very significantly in their home states, and they have done a great deal to raise awareness of elder abuse at the national level, including by hosting the 5 elder abuse conferences. I might note that this rosette is the symbol of World Elder Abuse Recognition Day. I might also note something I've noted in Parliament is that all forms of rosettes and badges seem to get increasingly larger with every new event. I'm sure soon they'll be plate size, so I expect something even larger than this next year when we're back together. The government welcomes the leadership and commitment of all of the organisations that are now coalescing under the banner of EAAA. I strongly support the goals of EAAA, which are to promote the safety, dignity and equality in health and independence of older Australians through education, capacity building, data gathering, research and preventative methodologies. The Australian government is very pleased to directly contribute $500,000 towards the establishment of EAAA to help and support them to work as a coalition to protect the rights of older Australians. EAAA will work closely with the Australian government to investigate options to develop the proposed Elder Abuse Knowledge Hub. And today I also announced that the Turnbull government will provide $50,000 in sponsorship for the 6th Elder Abuse Conference to be held in Brisbane. Brisbane seems to get all the conferences on 22 to 23 July 2019. So on behalf of the Australian government, I commend all those service providers and people who have contributed to the development of EAAA in the past and present, but particularly the EAAA working group of Seniors Rights Victoria, the Queensland Caxton Legal Centre, South Australia's Aged Rights Advocacy Service, Seniors Rights Service New South Wales, and Western Australia's Advocare. I encourage all of those organisations and individuals who are not yet under the banner of EAAA to consider membership. It will be a very worthwhile pursuit. So let me just say finally, I warn you as a lawyer, sometimes I say finally and speak for 40 minutes, but not today. Finally, by concluding, I'd like to just affirm the view that I personally hold that has been advocated very strongly to me by members in this room, and which is now held across government at the highest levels, and particularly by the Prime Minister, that tackling elder abuse is everyone's issue in modern Australian society. It's the issue of families, it's the issue of the legal profession, it's the issue for business. It's everyone's responsibility, and it is a top priority for the Turnbull government. The establishment of EAAA represents a very significant step in this regard. We must and can be more effective in protecting older Australians by combining our resources and expertise, and in particular in the field of financial abuse. So I look forward very much to continuing work with all of you in this room during 2018 to develop the national plan and to make a real difference in the lives of older Australians. Thank you for your invitation today.
Thank you very much, Attorney General. When we started this morning, I forgot to provide a hashtag for. I noticed people are tweeting in the room, so perhaps we use the hashtag EAAA, which would just make things easy for people to remember. So next, I'm going to introduce Jenny Blakey from Seniors Rights Victoria, one of the other members of the EAAA group and EAAA founding working group. And before I introduce her, I just want to say that Jenny really has been the driving force to get us here today. And she's done a lot of work in pulling us all together, and a lot of work with her vision and her passion around trying to set up this national peak policy organisation. So thank you very much, Jenny, and welcome to the front of the room. Thank you.
Can you hear me? That was very kind of you. Thank you very much, Russell. It has been a passion, but it's a passion that I've shared with a range of people, and it's a passion which came from a range of people. It wasn't something that I dreamt up. It's something which came from the people who came together around this issue. I'd just like to thank the Attorney General, and I also want to applaud the leadership and commitment of the government to this issue and the work that's been done. I also would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we are standing, then pay my respects to elders past and present and those who continue the journey, and acknowledge the great contribution of Kay Patterson, Age Discrimination Commissioner, Professor Rosalind Croucher with your involvement in the inquiry of the Australian Law Reform Commission and now at the Human Rights Commission, and also a new convert, Anna Bligh, CEO of Australian Bankers Association. And I just want to say, who would have thought? Who would have thought that we would be here? This started back in 2012, and so I am very excited to get to this position and think it's something which is a milestone to mark. And I was just talking to someone before and say, we beaver away and we beaver away, and that's got to be done next, and that's got to be done next. But this is the moment where we stop and say, gee, we've got here, and that's fantastic. We've incorporated as a company limited by guarantee. We've got the interest of government at a federal level, and we've got a grant to enable us to tackle this important work. So this is something to be noted. It started, as I said, back in 2012 with the first conference in Brisbane of just over 50 people, and at the time it was just a state conference, and they said, let's invite some of the other services from other states. And my staff came back to me and said, this is fantastic. We're going to have national conferences every year. And so they went on to Brisbane, Adelaide, Perth, Melbourne, and then the recent one, very successful here in Sydney with over 570 people. That just shows you the growing interest in this, and that's where the drive comes from. So why are we doing this? And I thought I'd give you a few stories just to set the scene. One story is of David, whose wife died. And 2 weeks after she died, his son moved in with his wife and children. And they stayed for a number of years. Some of the children have now left home and some of them haven't. But David's situation now is that he's not allowed to cook in the kitchen. It's his house. He has a cooker in the bedroom. He's not allowed to use the bath. He's allowed to use the shower. And when he comes out of the door of his bedroom, he's only allowed to open it this far. He's taken out a debt on his house, which was to help his son with his business, and the bank is now chasing him for that money because, of course, it hasn't been paid. There's Rita, who turned up at her priest on a Friday afternoon with all her possessions in a shopping trolley. She'd sold her house and given her money to, again, an adult son and daughter-in-law and family to buy a bigger house where she would move in and they were going to look after her for the rest of her life. But it got terribly bad, terribly wrong, and she had to leave. And Rita stood through 6 years of litigation going to the Supreme Court, where she was finally successful. Can you imagine what it was like to trying to support Rita through that process? Fortunately, in Victoria, we don't need to go to the Supreme Court anymore. We can go take a lot of the situations to the Victorian Civil and Administrative Tribunal, but not all of them. There's the story of the man who was living in the bus shelter. He allowed his sibling to move back in with his son, so his nephew, who had drug and alcohol problems, and he was hit with an iron bar. And his physiotherapist, who was treating him for his injuries, got in contact with us. We found him accommodation, and we've got a lovely photo of him smiling behind his IKEA table and chairs in his new home, his new place of safety. There's the son with the undiagnosed mental health problems, whose mother couldn't let him be homeless, who wanted to support him. She wanted to look after her son. And finally, he threatened her and took money from her and took her to the bank and would hit the wall behind her head. Finally, he got assistance for his mental health problem, but he scared away all the other family members who would refuse to come and see her anymore and couldn't understand why she wouldn't throw him out. So that's why we're doing this. It can take time to work with people, and we're doing this to prevent those situations and to try and respond to them in a good way. I mean, all of those had reasonably happy outcomes, not always entirely keeping the relationships that they wanted, but reducing some of the abuse or reducing the abuse and maintaining a relationship to some extent. Why are we doing this? To apply our knowledge and to develop it. In Victoria, the police at a recent forum said that nearly half of all the crimes against an older adult victim are in the family violence context. That's probably intimate partner violence, but also the intergenerational violence that we've been talking about that occurs within families. The Counting the Dead Women Australia researchers of Destroy the Joint said that in Australia in 2017, of the 49 women who have died due to violence, 16 of those were above the age of 60. Now again, that's probably intimate partner violence, but also intergenerational violence. That's why we're doing this. We don't want that to happen. We want that to stop. Elder abuse is an outcome of a lack of respect to older people. It's the manifestation of ageism. And we want to take a rights approach, not a protectionist approach. It's time to act now, as has been said. It's time to prevent elder abuse, to address the drivers of elder abuse and improve our knowledge so our responses are better. EAAA is to see a world without elder abuse, and our role is to act to achieve that. And as it's been stated, we're a growing network of organisations and individuals that work in the system, but also individuals and organisations who just support the elimination of elder abuse. We are a voice for action and using the expertise from our work with older people and the lived expertise of older people. It's multidisciplinary and cross-jurisdictional. As mentioned, our aims are to promote the safety and dignity and equality and health and independence of older Australians. We want to educate the public and professionals. We want to produce and communicate and share the information and knowledge that we have and develop our practice. We want to support evidence-based prevention strategies and best practice responses to elder abuse. We hope to have our next AGM, or our first AGM, will be at the next National Elder Abuse Conference in Brisbane, as been mentioned. So the next steps for EAAA is to set ourselves up, to establish our foundation so we have a solid service and governance structures, to employ staff, to develop an engagement strategy, and to contribute to the national plan and the knowledge hub. And we are looking forward to these healthy challenges. I want to commend the government on their approach because I think it's been a very solid evidence-based approach, beginning from the Australian Institute of Family Studies scoping paper report, through to the ALRC requiree, through doing the research around prevalence and the knowledge hub and the national plan and the trials of model of delivery and the register of enduring powers of attorney. That is such a great platform to be working from, and something which can't be challenged and denied in the future because it will have a strong evidence base. I want to thank the Honourable Christian Porter, current Attorney-General, for his commitment to this issue, and the previous Attorney-General, Senator George Brandison's staff, and also the Honourable Ken Wyatt, Minister for Aged Care, for his interest in this area as well. And so that is a whole-of-government approach. I want to thank the Family Violence and Elder Abuse Task Force and the Attorney-General's Department and the frequent communications we've had to get this to happen. I also want to thank particularly Lander and Rogers, lawyers, who pro bono have given a great deal of assistance to us incorporating, and in particular Hugh Lyons and Simon Merritt, who are the lawyers that I've been contacting with, and we wouldn't have done it without them. So thank you, Lander and Rogers. Seniors Rights Service for hosting this event, and all the staff for taking this extra administrative load on. The working group has been mentioned, and the participants over many years, and also particularly the older people who are brave enough to live through their circumstances, to seek assistance and try and make change and try and do the best for their family and themselves. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Jenny. So next we have Scott McDougall from Caxton Legal Centre in Brisbane. And of course, as was mentioned, Scott's organisation will be hosting the 6th National Elder Abuse Conference in July of next year, along with Advocacy Australia up in Brisbane. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I don't have a very fetching rosette. The best I could do was grab this manila folder on the way out of my office yesterday. Good morning, and thank you, Uncle Chicka, for that very warm welcome to Gadigal country. I'm very proud to be the founding director of Elder Abuse, a founding director, not the founding director, of Elder Abuse Action Australia. And it's a great honour today to be talking in front of an audience with such distinguished guests. And I'd particularly like to acknowledge the President of the Australian Human Rights Commission, Rosalind Croucher, and the indomitable Anti-Discrimination Commissioner, Kay Patterson, who, as Jenny mentioned, has been a great supporter of the EAAA. And I think now we know that the stories, Attorney, that Kay was telling us were in fact true. She did look you in the eye, and that's why we're all here today.
Quite frightening, actually.
Yes, I know. I've been there. So this morning I wanted to offer some hope and optimism as we reflect upon the enormity of the task that the Australian Law Reform Commission handed to the people of Australia last year via the Office of the Attorney-General. I say the people of Australia because, as the Attorney mentioned and as the World Health Organisation stated in their 2002 Toronto Declaration, elder abuse in an ageing world is everybody's business. We all have a responsibility to ensure that older Australians are able to exercise and enjoy what ought to be recognised as their fundamental human right to live free from violence, neglect and abuse. Whilst we may all share that responsibility, it must also be said that it is the individual who is the person best placed to protect themselves from abuse. And therefore, investing in and supporting the empowerment and autonomy of older individuals is not only the right thing to do, It is an effective protective strategy to guard against abuse. It was therefore very important that the ALRC gave such prominence to the principle of autonomy when framing the recommendations across the 14 chapters of its report. We must, however, also recognise that the utopian vision of all older people living autonomously in a society free from the effects of ageism, family dysfunction, systemic abuse and structural discrimination is not yet a reality. Many older people need support to protect themselves, and some need protection. All deserve dignity. The Attorney General has this morning highlighted some of the important research that's currently underway, and the EAAA is certainly hoping to contribute to the progress of this research agenda. I think it's fair to say pretty much everyone in this room is eagerly awaiting the outcome of the prevalence study. However, we do already know enough from the frontline experience of the organisations who are dealing with a growing number of victims of elder abuse to confidently say that it is a complex societal problem that is trending upwards. And I just wanted to show you quickly a graph of the Elder Abuse Prevention Unit in Queensland. That's their client helpline call numbers in the last few years. You can definitely see the trend there. The ALRC report offers important guidance to the Commonwealth and the states and territories about the wide range of law reforms required across multiple jurisdictions. Yet a comprehensive response to elder abuse cannot be achieved by the Parliament and the legal profession alone. We need key agencies within governments of all levels, the legal and medical professions, health providers, allied health workers, social workers, aged care and disability advocates, banks, accountants, financial advisors, academics, researchers, educators, Indigenous health and legal services, culturally and linguistically diverse community leaders, police and law enforcement agencies, urban planners and architects, and as Kay is fond of saying, we need hairdressers. Yes, we need hairdressers. All working within a coherent framework of laws and policies, and all geared toward supporting the autonomy and dignity of older people as they plan for and move through the ageing process. This is where the national plan becomes so important. A properly resourced and thoughtfully directed plan is essential. The success of any plan rests on the buy-in or emotional investment of the key participants. With so many key stakeholders required to engage, the establishment of the EAAA is a timely development to facilitate community input into the plan. We look forward to working closely with the Attorney General and his excellent staff, who I have to commend for doing such a fabulous job to help us get to this point, and on the creation of the Elder Abuse National Hub. And in time, we look forward to engaging with stakeholders such as the Australian Bankers Association. We're greatly encouraged by both the interest demonstrated by the ABA in the establishment of the National Register of Powers of Attorney arrangements, and by their presence here today of their CEO and my former Premier, Miss Anna Bligh. We want to work with the banks to help confront the challenge of delivering safe banking practices to older people in an era where technological advances have resulted in mass bank closures and the loss of personal relationships between bank tellers and their older customers. In coming months and years, we hope to see the organisational capacity of the EAAA grow, and with a membership base of non-government organisations and individuals that is reflective of the diversity of interests I just mentioned, and which demonstrates that elder abuse truly is everybody's business. Just before I finish, I wanted to thank the Attorney for that announcement about the support for next year's conference. Caxton Legal Centre and ADA Australia are co-hosting next year's conference, which is July 22 and 23 next year at the Convention Centre. I have to admit, I do feel like the poor sod who had to coordinate the Athens Olympics after the Sydney Olympics, which is so fabulous. So it's a big challenge, but we're looking forward to it, and there's going to be a lot of discussions in the next few months about the design of the conference. So make sure you come up and take advantage of our beautiful weather. Thank you very much, everyone.
So thanks, everybody. That actually brings us to the end of the formal proceedings. And so in the kitchen area out the back there, we have some refreshments, and we just would like to invite everybody to join us but perhaps have some one-on-one or small group conversations. Feel free to help yourself. So thanks again for coming along. I do want to actually just say, just before I finish, I want to thank all the staff and volunteers at Seniors' Rights Service, because thanks. We only recently got a small grant from the federal government, and we used that to actually turn this room, which was pretty much not as nice as it is now, put it that way. And so we're able to put on events like this, and we're actually hosting an event tomorrow for World Elder Abuse Day. And by the way, that event tomorrow will be, there'll be a launch by Tanya Davies, the Minister for Ageing in New South Wales, and it will be based on 18 interviews that were conducted at the 5th National Elder Abuse Conference in February by journalist Ellen Fanning. And those videos have been put together in a suite with education kits that go with them, and they'll all be available on the Seniors' Rights Service website and also the dedicated conference website, Together Making Change. People can download those videos and download the kits, and the idea of that resource is to allow communities to have their own conversations about elder abuse. So I encourage people to check out the website if you're not coming along to tomorrow's event. Okay, thanks again. Bye-bye.